I had a seven-figure income, a perfect family, and a house on the hill, until greed made me lose everything, including myself. My name is Cole Mitchell. I'm 41 years old, and for most of my adult life, I was the man people admired, or at least envied. I was the chief financial officer of a real estate company in Southern California. By any worldly standard, I had it all. A house on the hill overlooking Los Angeles, a garage with 2 luxury cars, vacations in Europe twice a year, and a bank account that made my parents proud and my friends a little jealous. From the outside, I looked like someone who had figured life out. But deep down, I didn't even realize how far I had drifted from the things that truly mattered. I thought success was proof of blessing, and that the more I had, the more God must be smiling on me. What I didn't see was that my heart had already traded faith for ambition. I used to believe that money could buy everything: happiness, respect, peace, so I worked for it like it was oxygen. 14-hour days were normal for me. I'd show up at the office before the sun came up and often leave long after it went down. Weekends didn't exist. Sunday was just another work day, another chance to close a deal, another way to get ahead. My job was high pressure, competitive, and cutthroat. And to stay on top, I did whatever it took. If that meant manipulating numbers to make our quarterly reports look better, so be it. If that meant pushing our sales team beyond their limits, so be it. If that meant whining and dining clients with expensive bottles of wine and empty promises, so be it. My phone never stopped ringing. Every buzz of an email felt like adrenaline. I told myself I was building a future for my family. But in truth, I was building a kingdom for myself. My wife, Hannah, used to beg me to slow down. "Cole," she'd say, "you're missing our kids grow up. You're not even here anymore." And I'd laugh it off. "Sweetheart," I'd tell her, "someone's got to pay the bills. God doesn't pay the mortgage." I said it jokingly, but deep inside, I meant every word. There were nights when I'd stumble home after midnight from another client dinner, smelling like whiskey and exhaustion. My kids were already asleep. I'd look at their drawings taped to the fridge, the ones that said, "We love you, Daddy," and I'd feel a strange emptiness. But I pushed it away. I told myself this was temporary, that I was doing all of it for them. What I didn't know then was that I was slowly trading my soul for a paycheck. It happened fast, like a storm that came out of nowhere. One day, everything was perfect. The next, everything started falling apart. It began with a failed investment project. We had poured millions into a new development in Orange County, but the market shifted overnight. Investors pulled out, clients sued, and suddenly the company I helped build was on the edge of collapse. When the board demanded answers, I tried to hide the truth. I adjusted numbers, smoothed out reports, and told them we could recover. But when the auditors came in, they found everything. Within a week, I went from being the company's golden boy to the man everyone blamed. The CEO called me into his office, closed the door, and said quietly, "Cole, we're letting you go. We can't afford this scandal." I remember walking out of that glass building for the last time, box in hand, and realizing I had no idea who I was anymore. At home, things were even worse. Hannah had had enough. The fights had become unbearable. One night, she said through tears, "I don't even recognize you anymore. You're not the man I married." She packed a few bags, took our 2 kids, and moved into a small apartment nearby. She didn't answer my calls for weeks. And there I was, alone in a giant house that suddenly felt like a tomb. No laughter, no noise, no family, just silence and guilt. I sat on the floor one night, surrounded by the trophies of my success, awards, framed certificates, expensive suits, and I whispered to myself, "How did I get here?" Why do I have everything people dream of, but feel like I've lost everything that matters? I stared at my reflection in the dark window, and for the first time, I saw what I had become, a man who had sold his peace for power. I don't know what made me do it that night. Maybe desperation, maybe the quiet whisper of a childhood memory. I walked into the closet and opened an old wooden box that belonged to my mother. Inside was a faded Bible, the same one she used to read to me before bed. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed, but as soon as I opened it, it felt like home. I flipped through it randomly, and my eyes landed on this verse. For the love of money is the root of all evil. 1 Timothy 6:10. I read it again and again. It hit me like a thunderbolt. All those years I had misunderstood it. The Bible didn't say money was evil. It said the love of money, the obsession, the worship, the trust in it, was the root of evil. And that was me. I had worshipped money. I had trusted in numbers more than in God. I had made greed my God, and it had destroyed me. I closed the Bible, sat there in silence, and cried for the first time in years, not out of anger, but out of realization. I whispered, God, if you can still hear me, I don't deserve your mercy. But please, teach me how to start over. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a strange sense of peace. I got dressed, grabbed my car keys, and drove to a small church on the corner of Elm Street, a place I hadn't been to in over 10 years. When I walked in, everything was just as I remembered. The wooden pews, the faint smell of old hymnals, the sunlight streaming through stained glass. It felt foreign and familiar at the same time. The pastor recognized me immediately. He smiled gently and said, Cole, it's been a while. All I could say was, yeah, I've made a mess of things. He didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. He just looked me in the eye and said something I'll never forget. God doesn't want to take away your money, Cole. He just wants to take back your heart. Those words broke me. Right there, in that quiet church, I got on my knees and confessed everything. My pride, my greed, my lies, my failures. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I began praying every morning after that. Instead of reading financial reports over coffee, I started reading the Psalms. I stopped asking God to bless my plans and started asking Him to change my heart. I didn't rebuild overnight. It took time, months of humility, repentance, and learning to walk differently. Eventually, a small real estate firm took a chance on me. But this time, I approached my work differently. Before every meeting, I'd whisper a short prayer. Lord, help me honor you with this decision. Every contract I signed, I asked myself, does this glorify God or just my ego? I started treating my employees not as tools, but as people. I raised salaries where I could, offered flexible schedules, and thanked them often. And I began giving 10% of every profit to ministries and charities that helped families in need. At first, it didn't make sense financially, but something miraculous happened. The more I gave, the more peace I felt. And strangely, the more generous the company became, the more it grew. Clients began to trust us. Employees became loyal. It was as if God Himself was saying, now you understand what stewardship really means. I realized then, money is not the enemy. Greed is. Money is just a tool, a way to serve, a way to love, a way to give. One morning, a few months later, I received a handwritten letter at the office. It was from a little girl named Emily, one of the children from an orphanage our company had been supporting. Her words were simple, written in pink crayon. Dear Mr. Cole, thank you for helping me go back to school. I pray that Jesus blesses you and your family. Love, Emily. I just sat there and cried. That single letter did more for my heart than any financial report ever could. For the first time in my adult life, I felt rich. Not because of the numbers in my account, but because my heart was finally full. That night, I went home, opened my Bible again, and wrote in the margin, "True wealth is measured in gratitude, not in digits." After months of silence, I called Hannah. My hands trembled as I waited for her to answer. When she finally did, I could barely speak. "Hannah," I said, "I've been a terrible husband. I put money before you, before our kids, before God. I was wrong. I'm not asking you to come back right now. I just want you to know I'm sorry." There was a long pause. Then she said quietly, "I can tell something's changed in you." It wasn't immediate, but over time she saw the difference. The anger in my eyes was gone. The constant anxiety had faded. I spent more time with our children, playing, cooking, praying with them before bed. Eventually, she and the kids came home. The house that once felt cold and empty now echoed with laughter again. On Sunday mornings, we sat together in church, the same pew where I had once knelt alone. And every time I looked at them, I silently thanked God for giving me another chance. I began speaking at men's groups, business gatherings, and local churches, telling my story of how greed nearly destroyed me and how grace rebuilt me. I would always end my talks with these words. I used to think being rich was the goal. Now I know wealth only matters when it's used to serve. And I meant every word. As months turned into years, my story started spreading online. People would email me saying things like, "Cole, I'm struggling with the same thing. I've lost my peace chasing success." So I started writing a blog called Faith and Finance. I wrote about integrity, stewardship, generosity, and trust in God's provision. To my surprise, thousands began to follow it, not because I was some expert, but because they saw their reflection in my mistakes. One of my posts read, "If you're exhausted trying to hold everything together, remember, the Bible doesn't condemn wealth. It warns against greed, because greed steals peace. Money is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master." That message resonated with people all over the world. Businessmen, single moms, students, they all wrote, saying it helped them see money in a new light. And every time I read their messages, I smiled and whispered, "Thank you, Lord. You took my greatest failure and turned it into a ministry." These days, I still work in finance, but the difference is night and day. My office walls no longer display awards. They're covered with family photos and Bible verses. I still make plans, still set goals, still manage money, but I do it with open hands. Every morning before I start my day, I pray this simple prayer. "Lord, teach me to manage what you've given wisely. Help me to use wealth to serve, not to control. And remind me that every blessing comes from you." Because I know now, it was never about the money. It was about the heart behind it. I once chased success and found emptiness. Now I chase God, and I've found peace. And if my story can reach even one person who's losing themselves chasing wealth, I want them to hear this. The Bible doesn't condemn wealth, it condemns greed, because greed blinds us to grace, and grace is the only thing that truly makes us rich. Sometimes I still drive past the old office building where my downfall began, but I don't feel shame anymore. I feel gratitude, because that's where God found me, broken, lost, and desperate. And that's where He started writing a new story. I'm not perfect, I still make mistakes. But every time I feel the old temptations whisper, I open that same worn Bible and read the verse that saved me. "For the love of money is the root of all evil." And I remember, it's not about the wealth in your hands, it's about the faith in your heart. If my story touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment about what God has taught you about money, and share this video to remind someone that true wealth isn't in the bank, it's in the heart. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and walk this journey of faith with me.